Hey, everybody. I appreciate you coming to this town hall with me and President Joan Freeney-Mundy. I'm Daniel Qualls. I'm the head of campus here. I'm a little muffled because I have this mask on, but I've got a microphone, so maybe they'll cancel each other out. But this is, I think this is the second time that the president has been here this year, this academic year. And this is for faculty and staff. It's just a town hall that I think we're going to talk a little bit about, or mostly about, the task force that just kicked off last week. But I think we're open for anything, really. If whoever
slides that
Yep.
can kick us off.
And instead of passing a microphone around, if you folks have questions, I'll run out and I'll repeat your question with this microphone. That way we're not passing around, stuff during a pandemic.
Okay, so hi, everybody. Good to see you all. It's a little unclear. If I move from here, is that going to be a problem? Kimberly? No? Okay. Because I do have a few slides, so I thought I'd like to start by just walking through them, and then we can go right into conversation. Just a few slides to show, and we can talk about whatever is on your mind. So let's go to the next one, please. Thank you, Jonathan. And the next one. So I thought I'd start with some system news, big news, with the new Alphon Foundation funding, because we haven't talked about that much here in specific ways, but there is an incredible opportunity. So if we can go to the next slide, please, John. Thank you. And I believe people have at least seen this press and maybe heard some talking about it, but just going to take a minute with it. It is truly a system-wide effort. And okay, we can, yeah, I think.
What happened, John?
Yeah, I've had that happen too. I forget what you do to not have that happen, but. Okay, it's not happening now, so that's good. Okay, so.
Excuse me, just one moment, Joan.
Yeah.
I'm watching the YouTube as well, and I'm not able to see the slides on the YouTube.
Okay. Did you at all, Kimberly?
I can only see a part of the screen. Okay, now, okay, here we go. I think it's coming now.
Transforms is the name that we've been using for this project, and it has 4 big parts, and I'll just speak a bit about each of them because it's a system-wide effort, and it's my hope that this campus has a pretty major engagement as this unfolds. The first piece, that is a grant strictly to the University of Maine. The rest of these all go to the full system, but the UMaine gift to Black Bear Athletics goes back a long way in the history of the Harold Alphon Foundation. Mr. Alphon himself had a huge interest in athletics, and in particular athletics at the D1 level that brought together people from across the state of Maine, and that served as a kind of uplifting and hopeful sort of experience. He has invested in UMaine athletics, that foundation has, for decades. This gift, though, is extraordinary, $90 million to do major upgrading of facilities on the UMaine campus. With some caveats, very strong focus on equity throughout the new work in the Alphon funding for athletics, including a focus on gender equity, on ADA compliance and equity, and on statewide availability of resources and spaces that can then be used in ways that we're not able to provide right now in the UMaine flagship campus, for everything from robotics competitions to large events and collaborations to musical events. And we've been talking to some folks across the system too about ways in which intramural athletics and others athletics can maybe be a part of it. So just getting started, but with a very detailed plan for renovation and upgrading of those facilities, which hasn't happened in a long time. And that was the interest of the foundation, and they really were very clear that that was something they wanted to do. The other 3 areas are all brought together in a single grant to the University of Maine system, managed at the system level. And there are 3 parts. And one is focused, I'm going to start from the right and move back. So the Maine Graduate and Professional Center, based in Portland, funded earlier with Alphon money. You've probably followed that if you've been around for a while. The idea for that was to take and bring together the University of Maine Business School with its MBA, the University of Southern Maine's Muskie School for Public Policy, and then the University of Maine Law School. And to co-locate essentially the leadership and some of the faculty and staff and students of those organizations in a single place. This is all, of course, pre-pandemic. Single place so that they could have synergies that you might not get with such disparate organizations, have ideas about interdisciplinary programs, and a very strong focus on serving the state of Maine from the base of the large population density in Portland, but to be statewide. So this organization has done very well over its existence for the last 5 or 6 years. They've built up many, many interesting collaborations and programs. Now, most of those have huge online operations as well, including the UMaine MBA, which has grown by leaps and bounds. We're somewhere around 400 students in that program now, and they come from all over the world. There are several specializations within that MBA, which turns out to be the niche that is working right now for that program. And those keep growing and new ideas keep coming in. Some of them come from other campuses in the system. Some of them are coming from private sector. And so that's a very interesting operation. These dollars, the 55 million, include some programmatic dollars for scholarships and faculty and staff, and also dollars for a new building in the Portland area. The second thing I'd like to mention is being described here as the Maine College of Engineering, Computing, and Information Science. That is essentially to take the engineering offerings that exist statewide in our public higher ed system. Largely, of course, that happens at UMaine. There is also a Department of Engineering at the University of Southern Maine with programs in electrical and mechanical engineering. There are pathways programs, including here and at other campuses. And the idea is to take that entire set of offerings in engineering and intentionally and with clear planning, make that a statewide resource for the state of Maine. Because as we think about the future in Maine, and Dana Humphrey, the Dean of Engineering at UMaine, can give great statistics on this, we essentially need to double the number of people prepared in engineering and computing going forward. These will be huge areas of opportunity for this state and for our students to pursue, simply because the infrastructure in the state is aging, and we will be needing people to take and solve those problems, and also to go and work in the private sector and government and elsewhere. So a College of Engineering, Computing, and Information Science, that work is just getting started. The $75 million there does also include renovation and some capital improvement at the University of Maine and possibly elsewhere, along with scholarship money, programmatic money, planning opportunity to design what this would be. The first one, or the number two here, the one I wanted to end with, student success and retention. A very particular commitment of our chancellor, and I think of so many of us, as we look at numbers around the University of Maine system, at UMaine, at the University of Maine, at Machias, and in all of the other institutions, our retention of students is not where it ought to be. And in some cases, it's really quite seriously not where it ought to be. So these dollars are meant to help us focus on the success of our students, their retention, their ability to move into careers when they complete their work in our universities. 3 parts to student success and retention. One is called research learning experiences. The idea there, based very clearly in the research, is that if students get engaged very early on in their first year in some serious way with their university, they will actually have a much greater chance of staying and succeeding. And engagement can happen in lots of realms, but the one that we've picked to work on here is in the research and scholarly productive activity that happens in our universities. So the idea is, so many students get a chance as juniors and seniors to be in research experiences, or work in labs, or work in the field, or work on projects. We'd like to make that open to first-year students. And the reason I wanted to save this is because I actually think Machias has an incredible opportunity to be a leader for this particular piece, because of the fact that you already have a strong tradition of community-engaged research, of engaging your students very thoroughly across your coursework. together with the other sorts of things that I've already mentioned about working in labs and in the field and on projects. So research learning experiences, those will be piloted at UMaine beginning this fall, and we're already now starting to hear of great interest across the system. Wouldn't it be great if the University of Maine system could say, come to UMS, every single student gets a chance in their first year to engage actively with a faculty person in their scholarly work, in their research, in their creative production. The second two parts of that one are as follows. One is about gateway courses. Those courses that we know provide very serious barriers for students as they try to pursue their careers going forward. That's been a national problem for a long time. I come from mathematics, as you may know, and it's a serious problem in mathematics because there's great disparity among what people believe the gateway courses should be, at least in my field. Some believe it should simply be a kind of continuation into calculus, and that if we can get everybody into calculus and through it, then that will be what's needed. Others believe very firmly that it needs to be more quantitative, more statistics oriented. And then once you're inside of those areas, there are great arguments about what should be expected and what do you need to know. And anyway, I'm sure it's like this in other areas as well, but we need to take a look at these courses across the system. We aren't serving our students well, given the high DFW and L rates in those courses. I have been looking at that at UMaine, and the answer is not that we make them easier. The answer is we take a hard look at what we're doing, what we are expecting, what we're offering to students, and we reconstruct those courses in a way that does propel our students forward. There was a famous report in math called Calculus, a pump, not a filter. And I think that's kind of part of the idea here. And then the third piece of this is Pathways to Careers, a focus on making sure that when students join our universities, they can see the way forward into a career or a set of professional opportunities based on the courses that they take and the experiences that they choose. So those dollars are not for capital or facilities. It's all about program design, program development, piloting, assessment, and student support. So I wanted you to hear about it because UMM should and could be involved in every piece of this. And as the project starts to get up and running, it's a 10 to 12-year effort, which, by the way, requires substantial match dollars. You see those dollars, the leveraging dollars. We have to raise all of those dollars externally together to keep this thing going. So enough on the L Fund. Let's go to the next one. Thank you. A little bit of an update on what's happening. Oh, yes, the last one on the L Fund. I will say this. We've started with some agreed upon principles among the leadership, and I mostly wanted to point to the third one, which is that all activities, all areas will include and benefit all UMS institutions. And you've already seen a bit of information coming out from us and a couple of memos about how that can work. So stay tuned, watch the website, a lot happening with that project. Next slide, please. So here are some data that I think are quite current about where we are here at Machias. A lot of testing going on already. Hope that is going well here, but it's been great. The student participation across our campuses has been phenomenal, and I'm sure that in our community here in Machias, that's the same. Really good news in that bottom left column, that the matriculations here are up 37% over where we were this time last spring. And that's during a pandemic, folks. So your great efforts, your intentions of helping to attract students here, they're paying off. And that, together with retaining students, those are our two biggest challenges right now. That's where I believe our major energy, worry, concern, great ideas should be going, particularly here. You have rooms available for quarantine and isolation. Your head count and your FTE numbers are shown here. Those are low, and we all know that, but we need to keep track of them fairly carefully. And then the CARES Act $2 for UMaine Machias student aid, I'm told that has all been deployed out to students and that they are seeing those dollars. So if we hear to the contrary, then I'll take that back. But so how it looks, it's a good positive picture in many ways, I think. And certainly the handling of the pandemic here, the small numbers of cases, the great behavior really by everybody, and the community effort has paid off. And so that's a very good thing for all of us. Next one, please. We are moving forward, as Dan mentioned, and this is not unknown to all of you. We're taking the partnership, which was established in 2016, so 5 years ago, and moving that now to, I guess you could talk about it as the next level. To me, it's just moving it to more definiteness, because one of the biggest things that I've heard in my time here, which is now coming up on 3 years, is we aren't exactly sure what it means. There are a lot of questions about what it means to have a regional campus of the flagship. How is that actually going to work? I think that we're ready now to start to get answers to those questions. And a lot of them, actually, when you look back, have been answered over the last few years. But right now, we've got to tackle, I think, the hardest ones that are left, that have not yet been fully resolved. There has been, through the partnership, we're working toward revitalization of the campus, have to work on increased enrollment. I mean, I think that's number one, increase enrollment and increase retention. And figure out the way that this campus, with its unique and incredibly special attributes, is able to really shine and be able to keep our students here and get them here. The budget integration, which we were asked to do, I think, a couple of years ago, we are now actually doing. It will show up in the 2022 budget. So those of you who are watching that will know that we've already proposed that to the Board of Trustees. They had no questions about that. I want to say something about that, though. That does not, and I would say this to the UMaine faculty who also have the same questions in a different way. We will track this budget separately, just as we would track the budget of the College of Engineering or the budget of NSFA. And it will be managed within the UMaine framework, but it will be managed as the budget of this campus. And so it's not as though the integration is meaning that somehow the dollars that, for example, come to Machias for financial aid, those aren't suddenly swept in and remixed and then passed out in different amounts. The financial aid amounts that are due to Machias will continue to be reserved for Machias, but managed through the very robust fiscal management and planning operations that do exist at UMaine. And then finally, the task force that Dan did mention that I guess you've probably heard about. I know you have heard about. Let's go to the next one, please. Here are a few excerpts. Here is an excerpt from the charge to the task force. And there's a preface to it that if you've not seen it, you might take a look, because it tries to convey both the challenges that we face here, but also the hope that we need to have about what this campus can be. The whole presumption underneath all of this is that the University of Maine at Machias continues as a university, as a part of the system. It continues as a regional campus, which we're giving more and more definition to. And it continues as a very special place and resource and asset for the University of Maine system. We have to give shape to that in a way that we can then work to do the things we've been discussing about bringing students here and about keeping them here and helping them be ready for their careers. So the task force is working on this list of really thorny and challenging and necessary issues. It is chaired by Lpe Id Is, the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at UMaine. And the members of the task force were selected because they will become the chairs and co-chairs, or leads and co-leads, of these specific areas. And then what will happen is, as that gets worked on, those co-leads and leads will look around and say, well, we need a little more expertise on this to answer these questions. We need a little bit more depth on that. We'd like to have this person advise us or this person come in. So the areas of the task force, and I checked with Emily again today to see if there were any changes, and you see in red a clarification. Tuition and financial aid, that is complicated here. And we have already been working through the Lpe Id issues with the US Department of Education. I can talk a lot more about that if people are interested in that particular topic, but we have to be collaborating together on that. The academic program alignment and the single catalog project is something that Dan and colleagues here have been working on, and we can look to him to help us with questions on that, but it will continue to go forward. Basically, the idea to me on the surface, and I understand that it's complicated and messy underneath the surface, but the surface idea is that there are courses here at Machias that University of Maine students would benefit from accessing, and vice versa, and we want to make that easy. If the students are members of the regional campus of the University of Maine, then taking a UMaine course or vice versa, ought to be fairly seamless. And I know that sounds really good in a sort of quick sentence. I know that the nitty-gritty of that is not done yet. Admissions and enrollment management. So as you know, we've had the UMaine enrollment management team, Vice President for Enrollment Management, Chris Richards, and his group have worked very closely with folks here on this campus to bring essentially the breadth and reach of the UMaine group, which is just by necessity bigger, to make the Machias campus a part of their assignment. And that is starting to show, I believe, together with hard efforts by people here. And we need to now make that more clear and formal. UMaine, UMM, faculty and staff interactions, opportunities, that's where shared governance is. And I know that's been a concern of many. And that particular, there are other things in that category as well. Everything from our UMaine Machias faculty members, UMaine faculty members. How can UMaine faculty members teach courses that have UMaine Machias numbers on them? There are many issues there. And then the heart of the shared governance issues as well need to be worked through there. I talked to Emily this morning to see what she would say to these questions about shared governance. Absolutely clear that we have the commitment to shared governance. I think the piece that's not clear is how that looks. Like, what does shared governance exactly look like for a regional campus? That's got to be defined and worked out in this group. Stakeholder relations, we have many, many people who care deeply about the University of Maine at Machias. We need to communicate with them. We need to be sure they know what these issues are. We need to bring their input in when it's necessary and appropriate, and keep them aware of where we are. We need to have growth strategies for UMaine Machias. These numbers, we can't keep, we're declining. We have to turn that. And so there will be a group whose whole work is to come forward with ideas, practical ideas for growth. This is a task force, meaning it's not, I love academic committees. I've been doing that my whole life. It's not exactly like that. This is like, they're going to have checklists and come back with, here's what we'll do, very specifically. Academic professional development growth opportunities. That in part is about the research mission and the instructional mission. We know that there is interest and great competence here on this campus in both areas. We're not certain that the two universities have yet found the best way to create synergies that allow people to take best advantage of what's available on each campus. So a group will look carefully at that. And then we are part of Washington County here. We are a very vital part of Washington County and the Machias area. And how are we thinking in a systematic and intense way about the economic needs in this area and the role of this university in supporting and advancing and helping to promote that economy. So that's the set of topics for the task force, and groups will be formed around each. Dean Haddad has already set bi-weekly meetings. She is completely committed to open communication about what the work is doing. But I expect that once the groups are set, we're going to start to see very specific queries coming out about what needs to happen next and how to move ahead. Next slide, please. I'm going to let Dan talk about this mostly. I'll just say a bit. There is a process in the system called programs for examination. And it is meant to be a way that each year, based on data, every campus is challenged to look at programs that have certain kinds of characteristics, like really low numbers would be one, and kind of think about what to do. And I believe that they're really asked to say, are you going to grow, or are you going to transform, or are you going to sunset? So Dan, I'll leave this slide to you because
there is another category that we didn't have any programs for, and that was just keep it as it is. None of our programs are staying where they were. So for grow, this comes from the division chairs working with Heather Ball and I this past year, and we do this every year for the system. And I think I present this in May. But anyways, so the business program, they want to do more with more partnerships with WCCC, and WCCC wants to do more partnerships with us, specifically their Adventure Rec. they want their adventure rec program to partner with our business program, which makes sense because it's one of those AASs. So they already have their major in recreation. So getting their major in recreation here, they already have those classes, so it's not a good fit. But they're very interested in our business program. Education, the area there that Heather has started to already secured is with special ed 4+1, where you can get a master's degree in special education in 5 years. I want to say, if you guys remember Claire Dillman, I think she was the first student who qualified and completed that program. But we want to expand that to some other areas in education. Creative arts, Marcus and Bernie have been working on this low residency model, and I think Marcus, I think you're actually taking the lead on that, which would allow that program to access a larger pool of students. There is some interest in the University of Maine at Augusta in our creative arts program. Psychology and community studies, this is already done. It's our MHRT certificate here is now available to the University of Maine. So Lauren Schneiders and Megan Duff this semester have courses that are just University of Maine students who are going to get licensed to be mental health and rehabilitation technicians. So transform. The Bachelor of College Studies, we've looked at how our Bachelor of College Studies, which is really a degree completion program, how does it fit? How does it partner with the University of Maine's Bachelor of University Studies, which is not a degree completion program. It's more of a design your own program of study, and it's a bit more structured than the way that our degree completion program is. So we're going to explore that one. Karen Beeftink has been looking at what can we do with outdoor leadership in terms of the University of Maine. She's worked really closely with a couple of faculty there, and I think outdoor leadership there is in the College of Education, which, as you know, Karen is a big proponent of experiential education, and it's a nice fit. Biology is looking more into focusing on allied health, which will hopefully, whenever we sort out the nursing program, I can see Tora's head. I knew she was thinking what I was thinking. That'll be a really good tie-in. And we've already added aquaculture as a concentration, as part of the associates. I want to say a minor. Is there a minor? I thought there's 3. Is it early college? That's it. So that's already been done, and so has environmental studies shifting to environmental GIS. That's already been done, which in the way that we think of curriculum is we like morph programs into new programs, but in reality, the old program is still there. So we have to sunset some of those programs, and secondary education and elementary education are 2 of those, where we thought what we were doing was merging them, right? Putting those together into one degree called education. And we did. That's a thing. Students are in that. But the other 2 are still there. So we have to sunset those. Same thing with English creative writing art. English creative writing and book arts. It and IFA morphed into the creative arts program. So that one has to be sunsetted, and interdisciplinary studies. But that's all old news. A lot of that you guys have been working on for the last year to make that happen. The Board of Trustees, they don't know that. They haven't gotten this report yet. So that's what this PFE process is all about.
And I think with that, let's go to questions. One has come in, that's why I'm watching this. One has come in previously, and I'm sure you all have questions. So let's start with your questions. We can take the slides down, I think. Well, no, because we may need to go back to something. So questions here.
Like I said at the beginning, we're not going to pass around a microphone. So when you tell us your question, we'll try to repeat it so people can hear it. I see one up there. Looks like Mary Ann. What's your question, Mary?
It has to do with SPE. When I look at the data that the FTE breaks it down into undergraduates and early college.
Yes.
And a concern of the library directors is when vendors have access to that as well, they're adding those numbers up
Right.
to get a total. So I'm just wondering why it was split.
Right. So the question is about, is early college counted in the FTEs consistently? And the system has taken to breaking that out so that we can get, at least for the kind of purpose we're talking about here, where we really are looking at our matriculations, students that we know we can count on to be here and to stay with us and to graduate. We're leaving out the early college numbers because in some sense that's an inflated number, although doing very well on early college here. At the same time, though, I would assume that for certain purposes, like deciding about library use, adding them makes sense. So, you know, we should be sure to get that onto the list for this task force if there's a sticky issue there that has to be addressed in terms of reporting. But it is a more, just for our overall planning, looking at them disaggregated is helpful. So, good question. Others?
Jamie in the back. What you have, Jamie?
Yeah, I just, you guys to ask more about the OPEID.
Sure, yeah.
And I understand from the report Jeff St. John released yesterday that there will be a unified OPEID across the system with a 2-digit designated.
Right.
Is there any possibility that UMM will have one of those 2 designated?
And so that's the question that was here. So now I'm going to put this down. It's a complicated answer. So does everybody know what an OPEID is? Okay, so and I'm not the best person to explain this. Probably somebody else is, but I'll try. It is a federal designation that is tightly tied to our ability to get financial aid. Largely, it's a US Department of Education sort of regulatory kind of code. It's a way that universities are identified across the country. And so when you have a unified system with regional campuses, it's exactly as Jamie describes. One of the campuses has the sort of, they all have the same OPEID with different suffixes as I understand it. Okay, so hold that to the side for a moment. Remember a little bit about our history here. So the decision was made in 2016 and then 2017 to make UMaine Machias a part of the University of Maine as a regional campus. And part of the concern, as I understand it, and others of you were here, was that it was going to be a precarious situation for UMaine Machias to achieve NECHI accreditation because numbers were low, because the figures were not going to be strong. And so a part of what's in those early documents is, we'll make you part of UMaine. UMaine Machias will no longer have a separate accreditation, and indeed will be folded into the accreditation of the University of Maine. Now, unified accreditation, as Jamie points to, that was being discussed in a very different way at that time in 2017, 2018, when those documents happened. But the need was at that time quite urgent. UMaine Machias, it was decided by people before me, would not go back through independently its own accreditation process with NECHI, but rather would be folded into the University of Maine accreditation. And that happened, and many of you worked on that self-study and wrote parts of it, and that was done in the 1920 academic year, or maybe 1819. It was being worked on in 1819 and finished in I believe, the spring of 19. So there was a period where the University of Maine at Machias was not accredited in any way other than as part of the University of Maine. And that was all agreed to in these documents about what the unified campus would be like. Of course, the US Department of Education was notified of that change in that time frame. And they began the work then of figuring out what that would look like with the OPEID. So last year, I forget at what time of year exactly, the US Department of Ed kind of really revved up. It took a little while, a little bit of a lag. US Department of Ed revved up its attention to sorting this out. And their decision, and we had attorneys, we had multiple conversations with them. Their decision was to go the way we have gone, which is the single OPEID that encompasses UMaine and UMaine Machias. And then at around the same time, unified accreditation happened. And so the OPEID question, which we'd been struggling with, at least a few people for these two campuses for some time, became a much more general question. Well, how will this work for an entire system that is accredited under one accreditation? And the solution that is still being worked on with the Department of Ed is this idea of a root OPEID with suffixes. However, what's happened with Machias has already happened. So undoing that part, which happened temporally before where we are right now with unified accreditation, is not likely, I think, at least in any near-term future. Because once that got changed, that triggers a whole lot of other changes, and so that's already reached out. You've heard about it with FAFSA. You know now that that's an issue. Had all of it happened at the same time, had the Machias idea come up after we had unified accreditation, who knows how those things may have happened. But at this time, given that list of other things that we do need to sort out, this isn't one that we're, this is one that the Department of Ed has made its decision, and we'll work with that for the time being. Now, that said, those who are really interested in this, a couple of experts that I'm sure would be happy to talk in much more depth than I can. I've just gone beyond what I probably actually really know about this. But Jeff St. John and Deb Allen on the UMaine campus would be good colleagues to speak with. They've been in direct conversation with the Department of Ed, as has Jim Thalen, the general counsel. So I'm happy to arrange a smaller discussion on it, but that's how I understand it now, Jamie. Okay. Other questions? Mark, Dan's in charge of questions. Marcus.
Yeah, a question on the Alphon Student Success Initiative, and just like how might we see it get structured on this campus? What might it start to look like? Do we wait to see the pilot in UMaine? Is there already plans to work for how we can get on board?
Sure, good question. So the question's about the Alphon work, the student success. How will this campus become involved? Do we just kind of sit and wait to see how it unfolds? Is it already organized? What's happening? So let me first ask, and I should probably know this. Anybody know if anyone here has been named to a committee? Tora? Not on a committee yet, but.
Mises,
yeah.
project, but as far as I know, there's no one from this campus.
Right.
John Vollen, the provost of the University of Maine, and the president of the University of Maine, Fort Kent, Deb Id Is, they are forming those committees right now, and we put forth several names. As for student success, I can't remember the faculty, but I do remember Lori McBride's, Lori's name was submitted for that. We submitted. They're still putting those together though.
And I will say we are and so we have at least one proposal on that too, which I'm not sure how aware you are of. We already have a lot of leadership, and we've done a lot of work at the first year RLE
Right.
stuff. I don't know, my words don't work today. And anyway, so
Yeah.
we have a lot going on, and we have provided feedback on the RFP that was put out,
Okay.
because we were constrained in ways that related to concerns around diversity.
I see.
So we did provide feedback, and I think they have adjusted our.
Sure. So absolutely, the person to speak with would be John Vollen or Deb Id Is or Dan, who is in those conversations. One thing we are planning to do, and it's likely not now to happen until fall, is kind of a system-wide summit open to all on the work, on how to get involved in the work, on how to plug into the work when these committees have begun to establish themselves. So this is meant to be inclusive and open and to bring in the very best ideas. There's another way to get involved in the work, which is if you are writing a proposal to somebody that you think kind of is related to one of these areas, then there are ways that you can connect in and be counted as kind of part of the potential match group, and that gets you in as well. But that's not the only way to be a part of it. This will only work for the whole system if we engage everybody in the system. So that is certainly the intention. There's another point that has come in. As an FYI, we can't sunset programs if we still have active students in the program. I assume that's
Oh, yeah,
true.
the students that are in there would,
They get
they
to finish their
wouldn't get
degrees.
the carpet yanked out from under them.
No.
They still get to finish their program. That's right.
Yeah.
We just don't take any new students.
Yeah. Other questions or comments? John?
For business and entrepreneurial studies, I just want to point out that entrepreneurial studies is what makes us different from other
Yeah.
business programs. And I know that there's recognition of that in our county state responsibilities. Specifically regarding the Alpine grant, Howard Alpine was an entrepreneur, and one of the things I'd like to see a little more of is recognition of the shoe industry and entrepreneurship that went on there. I know Dana Humphreys
Yeah.
familiar with it, but there was a big immigrant, and a lot of immigrant workers were part of that. And I just think we should recognize that as best we can for.
You know, that's very interesting. I tried to learn a bit more about Harold Alfond at different times and have seen some of that as well. Very interesting history of that company and its related businesses. It makes me think about a couple of things. One is that in the main center, which has focused on graduate education, but is increasingly interested in looking at where are the 4+1s and the 3+2s, the programs that can feed students into those interdisciplinary degrees. It might be a good experience, Dan, for us to put together the people who do entrepreneurial studies here with the leadership of the main center to just explore what the potential could be, because it is a uniqueness here. And I know that people at UMaine see that, but I don't think we've thought about the center. And then of course, into the engineering and computing, there's a lot there too. So great thought. Thank you. Oops, somebody else. Hey, Dan.
My question is, how is UMM being promoted through the admissions efforts at the UMaine level?
So I think the question is UMM being promoted in the admissions efforts at the UMaine level? I think we have a ways to go there to have it be as well promoted as we will need it to be. And part of that depends on branding. And this is not a new problem. Marnie has known this for a long time and it's sort of like chicken and egg, like which thing do we do first? But because we are trying to get clarity about the regional campus idea, that then needs to become a very big part of the pitch for UMaine Machias, frankly. You know, UMaine Machias, I can imagine the advertising, you know, all of the special features that are here. Plus, you can also be a UMaine student. You can also go there for courses. You can be based at Machias, complete your major here, add in some UMaine courses easily. I think that becomes a selling point that we need to figure out how to use. And at the same time, I do think some of you are closer to this than I, that Chris Richards' team, I believe there is someone at least partially very much focused on Machias, trying to think about how to find the best match for students with this particular campus. Marnie, you may know more there. I mean, it needs to keep pushing. We need to keep pushing, but the numbers are a little better this year at least.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have, there's a director of enrollment management that half of their job description is actually Machias focused. So that made a huge help. When it's written in somebody's job description, it's easier to evaluate the success or failure of that individual when it's written directly in their job description. And so they're relatively new to the enrollment side of the house, but have lots of other experience that's super valuable for us to grow all our programs here. They are super excited about working with us. We've been working on a regular basis with them, and that's going to be continuing. And so I do hope that this grows, but some of these task force questions will make it work a lot easier. Right?
So I would add that one of the subcommittees that's on stakeholders, part of that is a communication plan so that we can communicate to prospective students, to family, to the state of Maine, what is a regional campus, what's going on. Because if we don't know, they surely do not know. And so Marnie and Chris Richards have both reported confusion with parents and students, like, what is this all about? So that is one of the subcommittees, that communication plan is part of one of the subcommittee's tasks.
But we do have to have separate advertising for UMM versus UMaine, right?
Yes. Yeah. But they have to be integrated in a way that we've not done so before, I think. And again, these groups are going to need to make recommendations for how to do that. Tora.
I just want to piggyback on that and say, this year for the first time, I'm seeing really concrete activities that are, entrepreneurial and bearing fruit. So the Excerpt DL Division of Lifelong Learning has been really active in helping us promote our programs, and they have built a partnership with Hutchinson Center where we're going to be piloting programs this fall and are providing not only support for getting that off the ground, but also moving it,
Good.
strategizing on how it is to be and helping us to coordinate building our online programs. It's really been for the first time.
Okay, so when we start to see that progress, we have to, as you have done, point it out and build it and grow it and make sure it doesn't go away. The advertising is tricky. We face the same thing with the system. There are system-wide ads that go and that are, are really quite effective. UMaine does separate ads. Machias has in the past done separate ads. There will need to be all of that, and I think what's key to the marketing and advertising, we go back to brand, but we also go back to special assets that this university offers. And we've got to be clear. And a colleague of mine worked someplace where they had agreed on what, the 4 talking points were, and everybody had them on a laminated card and could recite them. And I think that's not a crazy ambition for us here to say, what do we say when we're making the case for this very special university? What do we point out to people? And I bet if we did that as an activity right now in this room, we'd get a lot of good ideas and they'd be quite different.
If we say we're going to put Post-it notes on the wall, though, they will have a rebellion, I think.
Oh, yeah, well.
I think we've done that too many times, maybe.
We have done that a lot. We've got all those photographs and all those stuff. No, you're ready. We're there. I mean, I think that so many of these pieces are in place, and it's as though what one person described it to me as somebody's just got to decide. There are lots of questions, and somebody simply has to say, okay, we've looked at all of these ideas, we've thought hard about them. The decision can be made by the chair of the task force, or the decision needs to come back to the faculty assembly, or the decision can be made by the UMaine president. We have to kind of parse out which decisions we simply know how to make right now, and then figure out who it is that has to weigh in to make the rest of them. And I know that sounds sort of checklisty, but I kind of think that's where we are. So I know we are at time, I'm concerned, but there aren't a lot of questions coming in. There aren't any more coming in on the YouTube. Know that I do regularly try to post office hour times, and I'm very happy to speak with people. I'm happy to get on Zoom. I'm happy to be here. I'll be back soon with the chancellor. I think that's in a couple of weeks. But I'm very optimistic. I think there's a lot going on. The Alphon gives us a very nice kind of central focus for something that we can do to move forward. The operationalization of this task force is a step, and it will take its own shape as it proceeds, but you all need to watch it actively, be engaged when that opportunity presents itself. And again, best wishes for the rest of this semester. It's been remarkable here. Students are here, you are here, the place is continuing on and doing good work. So I thank you all, and I can stay around for a bit. I don't have anything for another 10 minutes, so I can keep talking. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Matt.